Peter Schrager is in our New York Spotify Ringer studios looking super snazzy. It just fits. It's the most professional we've felt in a while. Really weird stretch of the schedule right now. We have 2 Saturday games with teams that are also all going to be playing on Wednesday. Do you think the league will ever do anything like this again? Is this a one-time thing?
I think they're hoping to do this every year. It's unprecedented in how it all worked out, Bill. So when they first thought of this Christmas Day extravaganza, they were like, we'll have 2 games and we'll give it to a high bidder. Netflix got involved, obviously, and gave a lot of money. And it was like, all right, we know we have a Wednesday game and they're going to be, premier teams because Netflix is paying top dollar. But how do we account for player safety the best way we possibly can? Like, well, you can't play Sunday, then Wednesday. Let's make it Saturday, then Wednesday, which means now 4 of these teams in the AFC, who just so happen to be 4 of the top 7 teams, are playing 3 games in 11 days in late December. Unheard of. And the way it worked out, and we're recording this on Thursday, and it doesn't matter who wins tonight, but originally it was supposed to be Bengals versus Browns on Thursday Night Football, and Amazon has the ability to ask to flex out. And a month ago, they went to the league and said, can we flex out of Bengals Browns? That's a terrible game. Can we get out of that? And the league said, there's no game to really put there. The only option would be Chargers Broncos in LA, but we can't do it because of league bylaws. The Broncos have already played 1 road Thursday night game. And one of the major rules was you will never play 2 Thursday night road games. So they go to Sean Payton and they say, look, you're going to say no, but we're going to present it to you. And Peyton was like, fuck it, put us on Thursday night. We want to be on primetime. We want to go into that building. I want to play them on a Thursday night. Now, the result of all that, a month later, is 6 of the top 7 teams in the AFC are going to be playing 2 games on 5 days rest, and 4 of the top 6 teams in the AFC are going to be playing 3 games on 11 days rest. Meanwhile, there's a team up there in Western New York, the Buffalo Bills, who play the Patriots on a Sunday, the Jets on a Sunday, and the Patriots again on a Sunday, and already looking at that playoff run.
Well, and then it works out for the Broncos because he's like, yeah, fuck it, let's go. We'll go right in. And meanwhile, the Chargers are all banged up.
Yeah.
So you're giving them 3 less days to heal, which I thought probably was an unintended consequence. Yeah, over and over again, it just seems like everything's working out great for the Bills.
It worked out really
I don't know how they
well
pulled it off, but the KC, the whole Mahomes goes down. Then Netflix is worried about their Wednesday game. But then Mahomes, I heard Raheem say this on the Ringer Gambling Show today, where Mahomes is like LeBron, where he gets these injuries and it seems like he's going to be out for 6 weeks. And then he's fine 2 days later. He's just one of those guys.
Yeah, I think he's going to play. I think he's going to play Saturday against Texans.
You know why we know he's going to play? Because the line moved 6 points.
Did it really? All right.
Yeah.
That's been the word out of that place all week, that the 1 seed is very important to them. They're not going to fake it and say, well, Mahomes is safety. Like, they want that 1 seed and they want that week off. And I've spoken to multiple sources in that building that, if Pat says he can go, he's going to go. He has earned that from the coaching staff, and they're not looking to protect him physically. I remember a couple years back in the divisional round against Trevor Lawrence, he bangs up the ankle. Everyone's worried. What's he going to do? He doesn't finish the game, but then he does play against the Bengals in the AFC Championship game, and he runs for that first down, and he just hobbled through it, but he got through it. I thought we might get a very Carson Wentz Christmas. I think the NFL and Netflix would not have been thrilled. I don't know if Beyonce and Mariah Carey and the rest would have enjoyed it. Bert Kreischer and Nate Bargatze and the rest. I don't know. But in this case, it looks like you're getting Mahomes and you're going to get all the fixins with it. And it's going to be Chiefs versus Steelers with Mahomes. And the stakes couldn't be higher because
there's one other stake beyond the 1 seed and all that stuff. It's Mahomes kind of lost his spot in line this season. And now he's turned into this. Well, when the playoffs come, he's going to turn it on. But I think from an entertainment standpoint and from honestly a ceiling standpoint, Allen and Lamar Jackson have just been better. Even Burrow's been more fun to watch. And Mahomes is just grinding these games out. It always looks like he has 7 injuries, and he's having one of those seasons you have when you're 37, but he's still in his 20s.
Yeah.
And he's played, a lot more games than probably some other quarterbacks the last few years. And the weapons have been in and out. The tackle situation has been dicey. I get it. But it's just interesting. Like I just think Allen and Lamar have blown him out of the water during this regular season. But you also feel like we're going to get to the playoffs and Mahomes is probably going to yank it back.
And I think that's why the number one seed is so important. Give us an advantage. Give us something over these teams. Remember, the Bills beat them head to head. So if they were to lose, 2 of the next 3 games, then they succumb and they have to go on the road. And they don't want to do that. They want the 1 seed. They want the week off. They think it's important. The offensive line has been a disaster. And they put DJ Humphries in there for 1 game. He lasted 1 game. And then Joe Thuney, guard, is playing left tackle for a team that's the 1 seed and 13-1. It's pretty incredible.
Not a great sign.
And the numbers weren't crazy sack-wise, but he was under pressure the entire game last week against Cleveland. And you look at what Houston's bringing this weekend, and between Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson, they have the 2nd most sacks in the NFL. That's in Christmas. You have this one on Saturday, and then on Christmas, you think TJ Watt's going to play. You assume Cam Hayward and all those guys are out there. Like, he's going up against 2 of the best defensive front sevens in the league over the next 2 weeks. If they win both of those games, though, they get a bye and they can rest week 18 and the next week during the wildcard round.
So I did a thing on Sunday with Sal about the year Allen's having and how actually it's a bad sign for Buffalo's Super Bowl hopes when you have these teams with the awesome quarterback having the MVP year combined with a defense that can't really stop anybody. The signs are bad. Like,
you went through the list, I heard.
Yeah, I went through it just in general. But then this week, Aaron Schatz had a tweet.
What's he got?
About basically in the last 30 years, 11 teams went 9-5 and then made the Super Bowl. And the reason he did it was because for DVOA, which has been an essential part of kind of studying, following football most of the century, the Ravens are 9-5. They're shoved aside a little bit right now, I think, especially as Buffalo's gotten the thing. But 11 out of 30 teams have made the Super Bowl, and some good teams like 2016 Atlanta was 9-5. The 2002 Raiders, you can go on down the line. 2023 KC last year. And I don't know. The fact that they're number 1 in DVOA and not being talked about, they have this Pittsburgh game coming up this weekend. They're 6.5-point favorites against Tomlin and the Steelers when Lamar has struggled against them, for his whole career, basically. But I do wonder if they're starting to get a little sleepy. Like, I was looking at their title odds, their AFC odds, and maybe they're the undervalued team because everyone's on Green Bay now in the NFC. That was I was a week late on that one. Maybe it's Baltimore in the AFC. What are your Baltimore thoughts?
I love Baltimore this year. I think they got the perfect bye week. They needed it more than ever. They got it. They come out. They beat up on the Giants last week where Lamar throws 5 touchdowns. Yeah. And now they're getting healthy. And look, the 8 of 9, it's real. And, the last Ravens quarterback to beat the Steelers was Snoop Huntley. And a lot of those games, were decided by 1 score or less. And the Steelers just found a way at the end. Even the last time they played, you remember that Peyton Wilson interception on the sideline with Justice Hill? They still had a chance at the end with the 2-point conversion, but there was so much confusion. Lamar afterwards is furious on the sideline. And it's like, all right, well, if you can't beat them in close games, like, how do we have our faith in the Ravens? I think since that game, they have gotten healthier. And I think the bye week was important. What I think is going to be very interesting on Sunday, which, I mean, you're talking about the greatest sports viewing day if you're a football fan ever, is this Saturday. I mean, it's right there smack dab in the middle, 4:30 Eastern. You got Brady and Burkhardt on the call. Justin Tucker is going to have to make a kick here. And Justin Tucker is going to have to come through. And last week he made one, and they had a lot of field goals, and they had a lot of touchdowns, and it was fine. But, like, Justin Tucker is going to have to make a kick or two in some inclement weather against the Steelers. And I think it's important that Justin Tucker gets right because that's how they play football. And especially against the Steelers team, it's always a 1-score game.
Going against the guy who now has the Justin Tucker championship belt.
He's got the belt.
Chris Boswell, headed for 200 fantasy points. Yeah, so Baltimore's 1st in offense. Pittsburgh's 7th in defense for DVOA. And yet Pittsburgh got their asses kicked by Philly last week. And I thought it was a more alarming game than a usual loss because they lost in ways that I just weren't on my bingo card. Like them just getting manhandled, them giving up a 22-play drive to basically finish the game. But if you're a Steelers fan, you look at it and you go, well, we got screwed on that penalty where there was clear video after of the guy, Darius Slay punching our guy.
Darnell Washington, yeah.
And then they're driving down. It seems like they're going to maybe tie the game and Najee fumbles. And it's like, we're a little closer there than you thought. I thought they got pushed around and manhandled and beaten up, and now they're heading into these next two games, Saturday, Wednesday. This just feels like this all flipped at the worst possible time. What are your Pittsburgh feelings?
I think your instincts are right that they have dominated in the trenches, and Russell has not made mistakes. And like in this game, Cooper DeJean has the fumble. Hurts makes the early mistake. You're like, okay, here come the Steelers. And then they just couldn't close that gap. And then, like you said, in real time, it felt like 2 hours at the end of the game. It was just, and like, it was such a long drive that like Brady and Burkhardt are doing banter about Belichick during it. Like,
right.
They just, like,
they're
snuck in
college.
you snuck in like empty the bag. We have to find something to talk about because this game isn't in hand right now. That's worrisome if you're the Steelers, because their whole mantra has been, keep the game close. Russell will make a play at the end and we'll run the ball down your throats and we'll stop you on defense. And they couldn't do that against a more physical team in Philadelphia. But there is a mental edge here. Like Tomlin's coming into this thing, like we've won 8 of 9 we've won games with everyone from Duck Hodges to Mason Rudolph to whoever. Like we can beat the Ravens. We have no fear going into this building.
Yeah, I part of me wonders, and I've been riding them the whole time. Part of me wonders if they outkicked their coverage a little bit this season, just in general. You look back at some of the games they won, some of the schedule stuff. Their most impressive win was probably that first Baltimore game, just for really pulling it out and seeing it. But that it just shouldn't matter this much that George Pickens is hurt. I like George Pickens.
He's their biggest threat, though.
But
like,
I know, but it shouldn't be just an absolute deal breaker to be able to, because then they're running the ball all the time, but they're running it for 3 yards a carry because whoever they're playing knows they have to run the ball. Because my thought is like, I wonder if this is a Lamar. Oh, I can't beat Pittsburgh.
No doubt.
Here we go. And he looks great.
Pittsburgh
loses again. And it's like, holy shit, Pittsburgh's in attack. I'm trying to think of whatever narrative comes out of that game. And that feels like a likely narrative to me.
And then it's a quick turnaround because 4 days later, Lamar's got to go play the Texans. It's like this crazy round robin. But Kyle Brandt and I on Good Morning Football, we always talk about the most valuable player industry complex. Like we made this thing like starting in week 2. It's like, who's the MVP? Who's the MVP? And I put it to bed last week, maybe a little premature. And I was like, Josh Allen's done. Like, it's over. Like, let's not just do this for the sake of a segment. And the amount of feedback I got from people around the league, not fans, being like, slow down. Lamar's got better numbers. And Lamar's games are all showcase games over the next few weeks. Yep. So on Saturday, when everyone's watching, Lamar's going to be able to have that showcase game. And then on Wednesday, on Christmas, when everybody's watching Christmas afternoon, Lamar can have that showcase game. And by the end of it, we're not going to see Josh Allen on national television for the last month of the season. And you might say, well, who gives a shit about national TV? The people who vote are writers who are usually in press boxes and just looking at box scores afterwards. But on Christmas Day and on a Saturday, they will be watching. And if enough hysteria gets going and Lamar can finish this thing out, it is not over yet. Lamar could steal this and get his 3rd MVP.
On FanDuel right now, Allen's 9-1, basically. He's a 9-1 favorite. And Lamar is plus 650. And that feels out of whack to me because Lamar having an awesome game against Pittsburgh. And then what you said, everything else he's doing is going to be like major games. Josh is going to be on like my top right multi-view for the Pats Bills game. And that's about it. Like he's just going to be in witness protection. With all that said, there is another scenario where Lamar sucks against Pittsburgh again, and Pittsburgh wins 18-16, and Justin Tucker misses a couple field goals. The whole thing. Speaking of awards, I wanted to ask you this.
Yeah,
I hate when people do interviews and they say, "I wanted to ask you this." I should just ask you. My bad. I'm still trying to get better at this.
Forgive. No, you'll get there.
Coach of the year.
Ooh.
Do you know who the favorite is? Have you looked at this?
I haven't. I would imagine, I'm going to give it to you, 12-2, Kevin O'Connell is probably the favorite right now.
So he's the only one with minus odds. He's minus 190. Dan Campbell dropped a little bit because his entire team got hurt. Apparently that was his fault.
but hell of a locker room speech in an interview in 97-1 in Detroit.
I guess the pregame speeches only go so far. Sean Payton 6-1. Okay. Dan Quinn 10-1. Tomlin 15-1. McDermott 30-1. And then you have to press the see rest of the bets link to go on FanDuel to go to Sean McDermott 30-1, Sirianni, Bowles.
Where's Andy Reid?
There's Andy Reid at 35-1. So
13-1.
Is this like a Belichick thing? He's not allowed to win?
Yeah, he's done. He's 3 wins away from 300 wins in his career, and no one has even mentioned that. They're 13-1. All they do is win.
How is he not the number 2 guy to be able to bet. I just don't understand.
He succumbed any respect for any of that, and then we'll see him in January. Like it is amazing how this award is given out. Usually it's a first-year guy who gets his team into the playoffs, and it's like a quick bump. And we've seen that from McVay and from Matt Nagy and from Stefanski.
It could have been Harbaugh this year if they'd gone like 11-5 or 11-6.
Brian Dable was that. This year, I think the O'Connell thing is happening because people are just like, they keep on winning. And if you look at their team, it's a bunch of castaways, whether it be Darnold, Aaron Jones, Jonathan Grenard. Like you go right down the list, it's all guys who were with other teams last year. But let's not underestimate just what Andy Reid is doing. Their roster every week.
We are underestimating it because he's just the 10th best odds on FanDuel right now, and apparently nobody's betting on him.
Yeah. And what's going to be amazing, we're going to go through the coaching hires, and Spags is not going to get a single look again. I'm just telling you like it is. No one's going to interview Matt Nagy, and their GM is going to remain, and their number 2 GM is Mike Borgonzi. I think he's excellent. I don't even know if he's going to get one of these GM jobs. So it's going to be like, all right, they do it again, and they're just going to bring everyone back next year. It's this fine, well-oiled machine, and they don't get poached. It's incredible.
You think like all the weapons they lost, the fact that they have the bullseye on them all year, all the close games they played that they had to pull out. I think he would be my number 2 choice. I actually think what O'Connell's been doing on Minnesota, that team is so well coached and so well prepared. Salvaging Darnold and turning him into a guy that's now probably a $30 to $35 million a year guy in the open market.
He's made it a real decision for them. And I would also say, I work on the Sunday kickoff show on Fox, and like early on in the season, Michael Vick, my colleague, who's now the new head coach of Norfolk State, shout out to Norfolk State. Michael Vick was like, Darnold's kind of like a game manager. And then he goes on this run where he threw 5 touchdowns in a game. He had to take them 90 yards outside in Chicago in overtime, did that.
Yeah.
He also,
said a few fourth quarter, like they need the drive here, and he's come through. Yeah.
That's not game manager. That is, okay, we're going to put the ball in Sam's hands and like, let's let him lead us the way. Interesting one this weekend in Seattle. I would think they would win. And then they finish up the season with the Lions and the Packers. And that's where it's at. It's like, all right, everyone's waiting for that. And those are the 2 games to end the season. But if the Vikings win out, Bill, they are the number 1 seed in the NFC. And that's incredible.
If the Vikings win out, regardless of what happens to anybody else?
Yeah, they are the 1 seed. They would have all the tiebreakers.
I mean, Detroit probably needs that 1 seed more than any team has needed a 1 seed in a while. I don't know how much it's going to help.
Detroit right now. I don't know, man.
Well, did you see that? Somebody had the graphic of all the people on IR by each team. And Detroit had 22 guys. I have it here. Detroit had 22. Then the next team was the Browns at 18.
Yeah.
And the Dolphins and Giants at 15. So the Lions had basically, if you go to like the 5th most IR team, they have almost, 60% more than like the 4th player. I've never seen anything like it. I don't even know. I know you have some Lions connections. Do they even have an explanation for how they could have this many injuries?
No, it's
Is it like, do you look at the training staff and go, are we doing something wrong? Like,
I don't think
it?
so. I remember the 2020 Niners had something like this where like just early on in the season, it was like Bosa's out and then Garoppolo's out. And like, but the crazy thing is they're still finding ways to put up points. Now, the David Montgomery loss is real. That one sucks. Like Montgomery's very important to them.
That was when I closed the door on my Lions 1 seed bet.
Because
they
might be.
They could basically do the Buffalo where they just outscore everybody. But what really made them special was that Montgomery Gibbs combo.
I know.
So it was a top 3 running back situation anyone had. Now they don't have it.
I know. And we had, you're going to love this. We had Taylor Lautner on our show, Good Morning Football. Taylor Lautner of Twilight fame,
Saga.
Who, by the way, is a great dude and loves the NFL. And he has a podcast with his wife, who appropriately is also named Taylor. And they had Aiden Hutchinson on as their guest because he's a diehard Lions fan. And we're promoting it. And like Hutchinson's like, if we make the Super Bowl, I'm back. If we make the Super Bowl, we're back. And that came out the same exact day as Dan Campbell's riveting radio interview. And it's like, on paper, it makes no sense that this team that is down 22 guys, most of them on defense, and are using 3rd and 4th and 5th string players in key positions down the stretch should compete. And then you talk to anyone there and it's like, why can't we just be one of these teams of destiny? Why can't we be one of these magical teams? And who knows, if you get to the Super Bowl somehow, you get Aiden Hutchinson back And suddenly you find yourself in New Orleans and you got a bunch of crazy Lions fans who haven't seen a world championship game since 57.
The Pats had a year like that where like Troy Brown was playing nickelback and it just felt like everything was going wrong the whole year, and they still almost made the Super Bowl, but they had the Brady Belichick infrastructure. It's a little different. Jared Goff, who's never won a Super Bowl, and Campbell was never,
Yeah.
But we've seen like teams, the Colts had years where it just felt like their defense had passed the point of no return and they were somehow in the AFC title game.
Yeah.
I'm not willing to rule them out, but that I got to say the Montgomery thing, that was the one that made me go, because their defense sucked anyway. Like they were going to have to win. Like Buffalo's going to have to win.
That Colts team, I think it was the 06 Colts team that won the Super Bowl. They had the worst defense in the league, and they'd given up like 250 yards to Ron Dane and Dominic Davis and the Houston Texans like the last week of the season. And then playoffs come, and it's like, we need to win 3 games. Can we string it together? And they did. And the home field always matters when you can get it. So if Detroit can find a way to just hold serve and maintain home field, if they win out, they're the number 1 seed. So
but you know what's been lost though? I think if they're healthy, I really do think they win the Super Bowl and they're the best team. I think starting the year for whatever their talent was in the situation and the guys at the points of the careers they were at, I think they had the best team. And I think that's why it feels so wide open now, because sometimes you just remember there was that year, the year Brady got hurt, 08.
Yeah.
When all of a sudden we just ended up with that weird Pittsburgh, Arizona Super Bowl. It's like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah. Arizona came in with 8 wins on the regular season and made a run.
Don't you feel like something weird like that could happen this year? I'm prepared for like any Super Bowl matchup, right?
The NFC to me is so interesting. The AFC, you've got your powers and like they're all. The NFC, like, would you be shocked if Baker Mayfield and the Buccaneers upset a team in the wild card, and they beat the Vikings at home, and then
they just scored 37 on the road against whoever, of course.
They scored 40 points on the number 1 defense, the Chargers, and put up 500 yards of offense. It didn't punt, and you're like, oh wait, what the hell's going on in Tampa? Like they might be the team. So this could be that year, and the NFC, like the Eagles could finish with 13 straight wins, and yet I don't know. Like, does that feel like the Eagles are going to run away with the NFC? I don't feel that way. I think the Vikings and the Packers can give them a battle, and the Lions too. So I'm excited for this year's playoffs.
If you're just saying talent now for who's left, it seems like the Eagles have the most talent in either conference, just all sides of the ball. If you're just going to do a ranking of, you're grading all the players. And yet, I don't even think the Eagles fans, even the Eagles fans have like their guard up with it. And there's always seems to be weird stories popping out and chemistry stuff. And so part of me wonders, is that a red herring? And then the other part of me wonders, like, every time there's smoke like that, it never turns out well for the team. So I don't know what to think of them either. They would have to be the team that, if gun to your head, you would pick, but I don't feel good about it.
That 2017 Eagles team, they lose Wentz, and I was the sideline reporter for Giants Eagles, and like Spagnuolo was the coach of the Giants as an interim coach, and everyone was off the Eagles at that point. And then Foles comes in, and I remember talking to Foles and Peterson and Brandon Graham and all those guys, and this is right before the dog masks, and it was like, the world is against us, they don't believe in us, we're the underdogs, and like that really worked. Can you still do it again? And now the thing is, Jalen Hurts throws for a couple, 100 yards to 2 receivers, and then comes up and he's like, is that what you all wanted? And it's like, no, we didn't do this. The media didn't do this. Brandon Graham, your teammate, went out on a radio interview and said that you guys weren't friends. Like, we didn't do this. And then Sirianni and Clint Hurt are having this really like heated thing on the sidelines where Jalen Carter is laughing and it's like, no, guys, that the cameras caught that. Like, that happened. That was real. And it's like, the media is trying to pull us apart. So they find a way to galvanize there in Philly, and I'm sure Sheil and whoever else you have on the Philly special can break it down far greater than I can. But like, they feed off that tension, but there isn't a lot of joy in the Philly fan like world.
So that's what's the noticeable.
They don't like it. It's always like tense and stressed, and it's like it's not this fun ride.
Yeah, even watching the Eagles, it doesn't seem like a team that's having like the most unbelievable time ever together.
No.
And I don't know. You notice different vibes from different teams. Maybe they'll come together. I wouldn't rule it out. But you did make me think of something. And maybe it's like 2 weeks too early to figure this out. But who is the best candidate for the nobody believes in us team in the playoffs? Because that Eagles team is a great example. That 2017, Wentz goes down. Everyone writes them off. Oh, they're done. And then it's the force that has been kind of the most dominant playoff force year after year after year. Is it Detroit? Does Detroit have the best nobody believes in us case?
Yeah, I feel like everyone's fleeing.
We don't
that
even believe
bandwagon.
in them anymore.
Yeah, I think everyone's fleeing that bandwagon, and Dan Campbell's the perfect nobody believes in us coach, and like Chris Spielman's in that building. He's the perfect nobody believes in us guy. I feel like they'll feed off that, and that is your team. And then I think if there's another one of them, like the other one that you would say is the Houston Texans, who are going to easily win their division. They're going to play the Chiefs and the Ravens over the next 2 weeks, and they might win two of those games, one of those games, and no one's going to pick them. And everyone's going to say, oh, well, whatever.
The thing with them is they're no, fuck you. Nobody should believe in you guys, team. You guys are barely winning.
I saw you lose to the Jets on a Thursday night in person. No, it's your fault.
You can't even score 20 points. You can't block. I would say KC last year was a good example of this when they lost that Raiders game. And people are like, I'm out.
Done.
They're not going to do it again. It's done.
I'm out. Aiden O'Connell beat them. I'm out.
And I thought they used that to their advantage. Yeah, the
Vikings are a candidate, but like O'Connell doesn't have that like deal with him. Like I feel like you need a coach who's gonna really dig deep. Sirianni does that. Dan Campbell does that. Like I've heard stories of Sirianni like going really deep with film references and like showing movie clips. And I remember Dan Quinn when he was back with Atlanta would call me on a Saturday night just to bullshit before my Fox show, and I'd be like, "Give me something." And he's like, "Well, I showed a Sugar Shane Mosley fight last night because the situation was this." And I'm like, dude, like these guys, they go deep for like what can motivate these. And like that's Campbell, that's Sirianni. Kevin O'Connell's more like, guys, we got this. We can do this one game at a time. Like there's none of that hate and none of that toxicity of like us against the world. It's more, I believe in you, which works also.
Yeah, because I think Pittsburgh is maybe enter the waiting room for this combo, especially if they like lost to Baltimore this week. But all right, we're done. They're out. Fun run done. I can't believe you won 10 games. You guys are out. Watt's hurt now. And then Tomlin feeds off that. But yeah, I would say Detroit has to be the odds-on favorite for it. Maybe Tampa too, with just not being considered at all. And Tampa's had some good wins. Their offense is excellent. Like they're over 400 points already, and they dropped 40 in the Chargers. And
you think about it too, they lost their offensive coordinator from a year ago. He took the job in Carolina. Then Liam Cohen comes in, and Liam's put up better numbers with Baker, which is incredible. And what's fun with this team is they lost 4 games in a row. Mike Evans was hurt, Chris Godwin was hurt, and everyone wrote them off. But they just went ahead and just kept on winning. So now they're the hot team.
You know who didn't write them off? Me and Sal, because they were in such a bad division. Nobody is allowed to be. Even Carolina, you could barely write off. Is 7 wins going to be our champ in this division?
What do you need in that NFC, AFC South? 30? You need less than 30 wins? What was the combined bet you guys did?
Yeah, we're getting that. It's under 30. We're getting that. The Penix Cousins thing was coming for a while, and I knew when they did that mile an hour stat for Cousins, it was 36 miles an hour. You could see it the way they called the game with the Raiders, where they just weren't going to let him do anything. Is there any way to spin this? Like let's say I'm Arthur Blank. How are you spinning this to me? That is it like, hey, look, this is why we had to invest in Penix. Like these are assets. If you go 1 for 2, it's a win. Like what do you say to Arthur Blank at this point?
Well, I think the first pat on the back goes to Kwesi, Adolfo-Mensah, and Kevin O'Connell up in Minnesota, who had a franchise quarterback and said, we're going to let him walk out the building, something nobody does without a plan B. We're going to go to the draft and we're going to pick up a free agent. But I remember talking to Kevin. He's like, it's heartbreaking. We love him, but he's 36 years old coming off an Achilles injury. Like we can't give him $100 million. The Falcons did. And your argument for the Falcons is like, all right, let's see what we get with Cousins. I give him a little bit of credit in that they eventually did pull the plug, because he's going to make $90 million guaranteed from the Atlanta Falcons for 14 weeks of football. And they're paying him that. And they're like, we're not going to just play you because we're paying him that. We're going to then go to the backup. Why didn't they do it
before the Raiders game? Why not give Penix that Raider game? I don't understand that.
I reported it on Fox a couple of weeks ago because he looked horrible, Cousins, for 3 straight weeks. So like the second week of it, they were playing the Chargers at home. And I reported, I'm like, Penix didn't take any first squad snaps this week. It was all scout team, and they were just like, we're going with Cousins. We're riding this out. It's almost too little too late. But this does open things up a little bit. Like Zach Robinson's a good offensive coach. I knew him when he was with McVay's staff in LA, and he was the quarterback's coach. And he does all sorts of cool, like QB waggle outside the pocket stuff. And I know how excited he was when they drafted Penix, because he's like, that's really cool. And down the line, when the time comes, like, we'll do really neat stuff with him. I think you're going to see an entirely different offense over the next 3 weeks, and a lot of stuff with a quarterback that isn't a running quarterback by like Lamar.
But he can at least
Daniels,
move.
But he can move.
Yeah.
Kirk Cousins cannot move. He cannot move laterally. That game against the Raiders on Monday night, I mean, he scored a touchdown early and it was like, pump your chest. Like, told you guys, no, like he couldn't move. It was a crazy game to watch. And that was the 4th straight week he's done that.
Yeah, it's weird because week 1, he looked like that. And then everybody took the Eagles in week 2, which is now looking back, one of the weird results of the season where the game's over. Somehow they don't. And then all of a sudden Atlanta has the ball.
Saquon dropped the pass.
Yeah. Atlanta comes flying back down the other way. And it's like, Kirk's back. And it turned out he wasn't back. But look, we've seen teams get out of these giant, awful cap hit things. Russell Wilson, Denver, takes a huge hit with him. And they're somehow going to be like a 10-win team this year. So it's not awful. I'm, to me, more interested. Like, this makes the season more fun now that we get Penix.
You suddenly get this new guy
with all these weapons, and it's like, what if this guy's good? This could be like, because they have a chance to maybe it's not a puncher's chance to maybe catch Tampa if Tampa has a dumb loss.
Can I break a little news here while I'm live on the podcast with you? I just got a text. The Jets have completed interviewing Jim Nagy, who is the senior director of the Senior Bowl for their GM position. So they're interviewing a lot of guys. So I'm just interjecting with a text I got from a source.
Does that count as breaking news or like half breaking news?
It's news. They
Jets
interview
news?
Yeah.
Let's take a break, and I want to talk about I want to talk about the Jets after that, because there was a crazy article today. So a big Athletic article today about the Jets and the ownership and the Suns and EA ratings and Jerry Jeudy. This became an immediate, everybody texting everybody the same thing. It's on every NFL team's Reddit. It just became one of the stories of the year. A lot of anecdotal stuff that I think had been floating around, plus some new information. And guess what? The TLDR was like, hey, the Jets are super dysfunctional, which we knew already. But I think what I didn't realize was how kind of medley Woody Johnson is. And people had always said when he was doing the ambassador thing, it was nice. And Woody's out. But then when he came back, that's when it got a little crazy again. So in retrospect, like, both of us were bullish on the Jets. You were even more bullish than I was.
Yeah.
But this team was so dysfunctional. It's not like we didn't know they were dysfunctional. So what made any of us think that this team was going to suddenly become functional? And is there any way out of this with this owner?
Yeah, that article dropped today, and it was like, I got, a lot of that stuff. Like, I can't discredit a lot of it that's in Diana's article with Mike Silver and Zach Rosenblatt. And like, look, when Woody took that UK ambassador job from President Trump in 2017, his sons Brick and Jack were 11 and 9. And it's like, 11 years old and 9 years old. He goes away. Christopher Johnson, his younger brother, takes over. And suddenly, like, the Jets building, it was like, all right, they're leaders in social justice. And Christopher Johnson's giving Kelvin Beachum like an opportunity to speak on behalf of the team. And it was right through all of like this turbulent time in the NFL. And the Jets were leaders in the space. And it was like, gosh, like everyone was pretty impressed with the Jets organization. And then they hire Saleh, they hire Joe Douglas. And then Woody comes back and his sons are suddenly, of high school and college age. And then you go to these Jets games and you see the Suns pregame and they're like, on the sidelines, and they look cool. And they got the blazer on, and they got the sunglasses on, and they're walking the sidelines. And it's like, this is a freshman at Harvard and a kid in boarding school, and their dad and mom own the New York Jets, and they have all access to do. Like, I don't spite the kids, and I don't spite the owner. But what it is true. Like, these kids are around, and I feel like I feel bad for Brick, the older one, because everyone says he's actually a good kid, and it's like he's getting lambasted in this article. Yeah. The Madden thing, I'm not going to discredit that. Like, things like Madden ratings could come into play. Like, I've spoken to sources like the Jerry Jeudy trade wasn't happening because the Cleveland Browns offered something better, and that's why it wasn't because his Madden rating wasn't what it was. But I will say, I don't know if this will be breaking it, but like Joe Flacco was with the team 2 years ago. And Flacco was a good veteran in the locker room for Zach Wilson. They go and they get Rodgers. And like the plan was, let's get Rodgers. And like, I could tell you that ownership was like, I don't know if we want to go that direction. Like, let's go with Rodgers and let's go with Zach and let's figure out what else we do. Like, I don't want a big pay Joe. Then Joe Flacco goes on to win comeback player of the year. And you're like, and like little things like that where I know the owners, it's true. Like I know that Woody was like sometimes in the draft, like will show displeasure if it's a pick he doesn't like. Like that is fact. I've heard that from ex-employees. And that's a lot of this. There are a lot of ex-employees from the Jets right now.
Which is always the most dangerous thing for a piece like this. There's 20 people who are like, fuck it, I don't like that guy. Here's
what
two
the
stories.
Fuck? I lost my job. Like it's, the Jets went through a turbulent time in 2014, 2018, and now it's this year. And it's always when they get rid of like a certain, group in the front office. And then what do they have to lose? They'll tell stories, and a lot of it's probably their vantage point, and there's half-truths and real truths. But like, the end of the day, this ain't the Pittsburgh Steelers.
No.
This isn't the Kansas City Chiefs. Like, there certainly is some fissures and issues with like some of the ways things go down. But like, I think all they want to do is win. Like, it's not like they're not giving the GM the green light to go get Aaron Rodgers or to go trade for Devontae Adams. But I can't discredit
here's
the article.
Thing, though. And Wickersham and I talked about this last week because I genuinely think one of the reasons Belichick went to college was he was like, if it's not the right franchise situation with the right kind of ownership, there's no meddling son of the owner, anybody kind of messing with me, I probably don't want to do it anyway, right? So after I put that pod up, some different people reached out to me. And a friend of mine was saying, you should do something on your pod about the difference between NBA owners and NFL owners.
Okay. I would love to hear that. You know that world. I know the NFL world. Again, I was going to say,
just like
the Jets ownership thing, that's in a lot of buildings, dude.
So that's the thing. He was saying, like, what's different about NFL owners versus NBA owners? NFL owners, they own these big, giant, billion-dollar companies. They're in a suite. They're detached from the fans. They get to do what they want. They'll put their son in charge here. They'll do whatever. But there's still a sense of detachment. Whereas NBA owners, they're in the crowd. They're with the game. Like, they're kind of in the mix for... And the type of people that have been buying NBA teams aren't like these NFL, like just these super rich families passing down the team to different generations. In the NBA, a lot of the owners they have are people that either came up with the money themselves because they were rich, or they thought outside the box, or they were some family that bought in, or there's somebody like that Matt Ishbia who's like the self-made guy who's like, I know how to do everything, and it's like all over the place. But the point is, like, there's so many of these Jet situations in the NFL, and I don't feel like there's the same in the NBA. There's different levels of owner incompetence in the NBA, but it's somehow a different lane than NFL incompetence. The Jets have been like this for 15 years, right?
Yeah. I mean, look, I think the NFL has a different structure with ownership. So in NBA, you can be a rich finance guy and you can buy a team. With the NFL, private equity can only now own up to 10% of a team. They only let 6 different private equity companies even play a role in that. That's brand new. Yeah. And for the most part, all of the owners are majority owners, and it's been handed down family, generation. Like the Bengals
or they
ownership,
bought in the 90s or the 80s and got it at a certain price, and they just have all the power.
But like the Bengals ownership group, like that's their that's their main income, right? Like that's their business. They own the Bengals. You look around and you go all the way to like the Rams, like that's a new owner, right? So the Cronkies, like they obviously have a whole sorts of real estate stuff and they own all these different teams. But there are a lot of teams where the owners are families and it's handed down generation to generation. And like the Steelers are one of those teams. But over the years, Jimmy Haslam had a minority stake of the Steelers. Then he goes and buys the Browns. David Tepper had a minority stake of the Steelers. Then he goes and becomes the majority owner of the Panthers. You're not going to be a Johnny-come-lately in this circle and just be like, I got a lot of money, I want to buy an NFL team. That's not how it works. And like in New York, like Gary Vaynerchuk always says, I want to own the Jets. Like, and Gary V wants to own the Jets. I think in different leagues, like that's a possibility, but the Johnsons aren't selling this thing. Like they're just not. And they might give a minority piece to someone here at some point, but like they'll always be 51% owners. And that's for most of these teams. And the minority piece for these owners, like if you were to be a minority owner, and this week we saw Vince Carter and Tracy McGrady are now minority owners of the Buffalo Bills. All right. And Josie Altidore is a minority owner, and Lewis Hamilton's a minority owner, and Condoleezza Rice is a minority owner. And you can go all through. What is that? It's nothing other than I could say I own it. I can go to the dinner party.
Yeah, it's season tickets.
And I get season tickets and I got a spot in the suite.
I go to a couple meetings. Yeah, I go to a couple board meetings and that's it. This was figured out in the NBA over the course of the last 20 years because these groups would buy franchises, but really like one guy was in charge. And you would have these people putting in real money and they're like, fuck, I'm not in charge of anything. This
what
sucks.
Do I get other than saying I'm an owner and then someone being like, but you're not that guy. And he's like, yeah, no, but I am an owner. And there's enough people with egos. You always talk about the rich guy tables and it's like, there's so few of these teams available that to say I'm even a 0.1% owner is some cachet in a Washington, D.C. Beltway dinner. Like there's all these different minority owners of the Commanders. Like that's social equity. It's something like.
Right. But they still, I think the newer owners that buy teams like that and have minority groups, they're strategically picked to bring one value thing to the whole equation that they kind of need. Whoever it is, whether it's somebody who's forward facing, somebody who's really smart, somebody who might know how to build a new arena. I think when I look at some of the NBA stuff, the family that operates the most like an NFL team, like the dysfunctional generation by generation NFL team that just is the Lakers.
Interesting.
That's the team where the dad had the team really from the 70s on. He passed it down to his kids. They'll never get rid of it. They don't have the kind of crazy money to, basically their money comes through the team.
That's it, from the Lakers.
But there's like 10 NFL teams that operate like the Lakers do. I think the Giants are like that, even though I know people speak highly of the Maras. Like that, the Giants have been one of the most dysfunctional franchises for over a decade now. And they don't seem like they have a plan.
And like they obviously the Tishes bought in as well, and that goes generations too. So now you have like multiple generations of Tishes and Maras. But I would say, there's a big enough family there where those people do different things outside of football and have like the Arizona Cardinals. Michael Bidwill's business is the Arizona Cardinals. Like he was actually a lawyer by trade, and his dad passed the team down, and now his ownership is the Cardinals. And the Spanos family, like they all work there. There's a lot of them. And I really like John Spanos, and I've grown to become very friendly with Dean Spanos. Like, but that's the family business now. So it's this $1 billion company, but it's being operated by families and their family. It's a
multi-billion-dollar company. But then the other some of the people that have come in the last decade: Shad Khan, Tepper,
who's
Haslam, and then the new
Josh Harris,
group. Which is like the new kind of modern owner where they're buying these franchises, but it's just part of a bigger portfolio for them, right? It's not like
Harris
you're not living or dying with the success
too.
of the team. Who is the NFL owner that was like sitting on the bench like Cuban was with the Mavs forever, right? Arthur Blank.
Arthur Blank was
one of the biggest
honest.
companies in the world. And then he just shows up and he'll come down the sidelines. But it's funny how the stakes somehow seem lower for the football owners because just owning a team in this league that is like one of the best businesses in the world,
you're going to make
already won.
You're going to make a profit. I mean, the Jets raised season ticket prices this year. I mean, amidst all this, the PSL owners were given an email like, "Hey, the tickets are being jacked up next year despite season." Knowing that process, they're going to interview everybody for a GM job, and I would go in there, and my advice to those GMs would be, you have to find a way to finesse the egos in the room of like, obviously like what he's going to want to hear, like what your thoughts are, but you're going to also have to tell them straight up, like, I can also manage all of this because there is a next generation coming. Like his kids aren't going anywhere. One of them's a freshman in college. The other one's in high school. Like they're only going to get older and more power and more emboldened. And it's like, if that's a problem as a GM, like you need to have the backbone to be able to say like, I can't have that around, or I don't want that around. And the same for the coaches. Like that's the truth of it. So the owners aren't going anywhere. I find it so naive for all these fans being like, just sell the team. Like
they're 100% not selling the team. Even Snyder, who they were basically trying to set his franchise on fire, and he wouldn't sell the team. What are some good examples of how it should work that aren't just like the Steelers passing a franchise down? Like to me, it seems like the Cronkies with the Rams just realizing like, hey, we have a good front office and a great coach. Let's just trust these guys. That seems how it should work on paper.
Yeah, so Stan Kroenke obviously owns it. His son Josh, who plays a bigger role with the Nuggets and with
everybody
Arsenal.
likes him. Yeah,
Josh is great, and he's in his 40s, and he's not look at me, not hey, I'm in this. He's just he's there, and he operates, and he's very involved.
He's the positive upside of a legacy kid. I would say you'd point to him as like that's a success story of
and I would
also kid.
I would also say Chargers John Spanos, who works in the front office, like he's also like people see him out there and he like isn't about look at me and very involved. But the Kroenkes though, their front office is interesting. So you've got those guys. Then the president is a guy named Kevin Demoff, whose father Marvin was an NFL agent for many years, and Kevin's been there since St. Louis. And then under him, it's your GM, Les Snead, and this other guy, Tony Pastors, who kind of manages the Kroenkes as well. And it's like, they're all swimming on the same thing upstream. And it's Demoff also is the president of the Avalanche and the Nuggets and the Rapids. And it's like, there's a lot of different entities and it's all under this Kroenke sports banner. But Stan and Josh are never going to come in and tell Sean McVay, I don't like the play call. I can't say that's true for every owner around the league.
Right. Yeah, it's funny
and that's something you can't control. It's I own the team. I want to have my voice heard. Yeah,
because it seems like all of these guys have the son, who, or in Jerry Jones's case, the daughter that everybody likes, Charlotte, who everybody thinks is good. But everyone has the son for the most part. And then if you ask other people, I'm talking NBA, NFL, whatever. Like, so what's the son like? And it could go one of three ways. They could be like, oh, he's good. He's really good. Like, it's almost like surprising. Or they'll be like, he's pretty sharp, I guess.
Or he's Tommy Callahan. He's Tommy boy.
Then there's the third one where it's like, what's the son like? And they go, and then you're like, oh, it must be a disaster.
Yeah.
This guy must be the absolute fucking worst.
Which is why I want to give a pass to Woody's kids who got killed in this Athletic article. Bill, they're your son's
under 20.
age.
They're my son's age.
They're your son's age. What are you doing? You're telling the kid. Like, I remember before the Super Bowl in Arizona, and I don't know if I should share it, but I will. We're walking around the field. It was a Fox Super Bowl, so I have all access. And I'm walking around with Michael Vick, Charles Woodson, and Sean Payton. And Goodell comes over, and Jay-Z's there, and there's this conversation. And I like eke to the back because I know my place in these things. No one wants to see my dumb ass. So I'm like, and then like, I see Woody's kids on the field and they're like taking photos with Jay-Z. And I'm like, I would do the same thing if I was a 17-year-old kid at the Super Bowl and my dad owned the Jets. And like, do you spite him for that? No, it's the job of everyone else to say, okay, we need to put up some walls here and see like what we're going to do. But
where it gets dangerous is like the Jaguars, where Shad Khan, who owns a bunch of stuff and who's just got an incredible amount of money and they've spent money in the arena. Football team's a mess. The son's kind of running the team, but he's also running AEW full time.
And a soccer team.
And the soccer team. And if you're Belichick, and even if that was a job that was, you thought, oh, if I wait a month, maybe they'll just give me the car keys. It's like, what is that job? I have a weird ownership situation. I'm in Jacksonville, Florida, and I have no idea if my quarterback will ever be good. And those will be my mid-70s. Like, the more I think about it, like I actually really like that North Carolina job for him, because college jobs these days, unless you're in a perfect NFL situation, like I think Harbaugh Chargers, that's like a perfect situation.
Totally.
Right? Or the Broncos being
They needed him and he wanted them. Broncos.
And he's in LA. Broncos, same thing. We need you, Sean Payton. Here are the car keys. And I just don't think that situation is there for anybody. Like if you're Vrabel now, and I think Vrabel's the best candidate of all these guys. If you're Vrabel, what's the situation where you're like, oh, well, that's a no-brainer. I got to do that. Is it even Cincinnati?
I'm going back to Belichick. There could be two truths. I know Lombardi comes on your podcast and we love Mike and I've exchanged texts with him. There could be two truths that A, this was an amazing situation for Belichick to fall back on, and B,
he had no NFL home.
There was no NFL job. But also, to their self-awareness, there was no job that they wanted. So it was a both ways. Now,
but that's my question. Like, what's the job this year?
But if you're Vrabel, can you be out for 2 years? I don't know. Like Peyton,
I'm not talking about him.
Off.
I'm talking for Vrabel.
Yeah, I'm saying for Vrabel, can you wait 2 years, like, and just say, well, I'm going to be, I'm going to wait for a better opportunity. Like, that's the problem.
You're waiting. You're basically waiting for the Pats job. If you're waiting an extra year, you're like, this Pats thing's going to go badly. I'm just going to wait until it falls apart.
And you're walking into a situation where they didn't give you the decency of an interview last time around when you were a free agent.
Well, that's because Kraft hired the guy 5 years ago.
And they didn't even go through the process. If you're Vrabel, well, and the story I got today that I think went out, that Greg Bedard, who I think is very plugged in, said that you can get a Vrabel, McDaniels, and like the whole band can go back to New England when everyone thought that was the crew going, not Vrabel, but everyone thought McDaniels, Patricia. Well, Belichick hasn't hired any of those guys yet. Like, I think they got to work out contracts with those guys. So you might be able to get the band back together up in New England. I mean, would you want to go back there if you're Vrabel after they didn't even give you the look the first time?
I don't think it was a slap in the face that they didn't give him a look. I think the Mayo thing had been done for a couple of years. So that was one of my questions for you, actually, to do a little coach watch.
Yeah.
Because we have Jets, Saints, Bears open.
Uh-huh.
Watching the last 3 weeks of the season, Peterson, I'm guessing that's a wrap in Jacksonville, right?
Yes, I would think.
So there's 4 spots. Dayball seems like he's coming back. And my guess is they'll give him one more year and then they'll hire new people for the front office, and that's how that plays out. But maybe they won't hang.
Oh, you think I think the GM is safe in New York. I think Joe Shane is safe. I think the GM
Dayball's
is safe.
not safe.
I don't know if he's 100% safe. I would think if it's up to the Maras, they would love to just get the season over with and keep both of them.
Okay, but let's pencil that in.
There have been planes above, MetLife the last 2 home games saying, "Please end this misery, fire them all." Like that's the one thing like the Maras can't stand, like when the fans are not in the building or it's an embarrassment. So Joe Judge was safe 14 weeks through the season 2 years ago, and then he ran a quarterback sneak with Jake Fromm and lost it in his press conference, and it was like, we have to fire you. That's where Daboll's at right now. I think like you just can't melt down.
That's a big talking point right now with the Pats fans, because if you really are completely all out on Mayo. And I was 100% out, and then a couple of the players stuck up for him this week. So now I'm like, all right, I'll give it one more week. But Drake May stuck up for him. Dietrich West stuck up for him. But he's been just awful.
And he talks, there's this meme of like, Gerard Mayo. Yeah, he says something. Gerard Mayo makes terrible decision, says something at press conference, and then backs it, and then walks it back, but sort of also puts a foot in his mouth. Like it's been
I think he said 4 times this year in the preseason where he said something that everybody's like, wait, what just happened? And then the next day he had to do to clarify something I said yesterday.
Yeah.
And I don't know how many more of those he gets. The Arizona game was alarming, but they got Buffalo this week. They got Buffalo in the last week, which might actually mean something for Buffalo. So to me, Mayo's on the coach watch list, even though I don't think Kraft will fire him after
I don't think they want to either. I think they would love to not admit a mistake. You know what I mean? And like they would love to ride this thing out one more season.
But the thing is, that's fine that they don't want to admit a mistake, and maybe he deserves a second year. The difference is Vrabel. I just think Vrabel is a great coach. If that's going to cost you Vrabel, you're in the same situation like the Jets were in, where they could have had Vrabel a year ago probably, and they brought back Saleh when it clearly wasn't going to work. Pierce on Vegas.
Interesting. Look, I've been
depending on how the next 3 games go. I can't say I'm positive he's coming back.
Same, but I also can't say I'm positive he's gone. I also think it was reported by Ian Rappaport this week, and I know it's accurate on the quarterback spot that Brady's like not just going to be a silent owner and posing for photos. Like Brady's going to have a voice in this and is going to play a role. And so I know there's no like great connection, but they are former players, and obviously Brady and Pierce have a relationship from their playing days. But like, I think Brady plays a role in this as well, and they're going to value his opinion.
All right, here are the 3 I got to get your take on, and I'm watching this for the next 3 weeks. There's always a surprise. I can't believe they let go of that guy, Coach.
Yeah.
The nominees: Mike McDaniel in Miami.
Yep. They just gave him a huge contract extension, but Stephen Ross money's not an issue. So okay, go on.
Shane Steichen in Indianapolis.
Okay.
Kyle Shanahan in San Francisco.
Mm.
Those would be my 3. I'd be shocked if they were let go one day after the season, but I also wouldn't be shocked. Yeah, and then I guess maybe you could put Zach Taylor in there, but I actually think there's a chance the Bengals could make the playoffs if Denver.
And also, not to talk about finances in that kind of way, but like the Bengals are not ones. Yeah, they're not looking to pay 2 coaches at once.
Right. When you decide to have a team of like half rookies and undrafted free agents, maybe you don't want to pay 2 coaches. So McDaniel, Steichen, Shanahan, rank in order of what would surprise you the most.
Shanahan would surprise me the most. I know it's a very, very dark year there in San Francisco. Like knowing Jed very well, knowing John Lynch very well, they're knowing Kyle very well. They're trying to be upbeat, but like this season started with the lockouts, which was sour as it was, and then their first round pick got shot. And it was like, okay, that's a major adverse situation. Let's try to work through it. And then they proceeded to lose their running back right before the season. That was their offensive player of the year in the league. And then, like, I don't want to be, like you've had players have real tragedies in their life. Like Trent Williams lost a kid this season. Like real dark stuff on top of all these injuries. And it's like, just get to the finish line. And I don't think Kyle Shanahan's going to pay the price for this year. It's one of those truly brutal.
The official year from hell team.
It's the official year from hell team that, like, as bad as things have been in New York with the Jets, like the Niners, like that's real life stuff. And it has been so bad. And they're just trying to stay above it. When they beat the Bears in that game, like there was like a feeling of like great relief and like just that we got to win. And last week was atrocious on Thursday night at home in front of their crowd, losing 12-6 to the Rams. Like it's just get to the end. I don't think Kyle Shanahan, unless he has some major blow up with Jed, which I don't think is happening. Steichen and Irsay, I don't know enough. I know Irsay was just absolutely sick to his stomach over Carson Wentz losing to the Jaguars in a Week 17 game a couple years ago. And it's like, he's out. Like, get rid of him. Like, but I don't know if that's the relationship with the coach here, that he would make a rash decision, but disappointing season there. And then Mike McDaniel, they gave him a monster extension before the season. But Stephen Ross is one of the wealthiest owners in the league, and this thing has gone way off the rails, and nothing would surprise me because that's the same owner who fired Brian Flores when no one thought that was a possibility a couple of years ago.
Yeah, and that goes back to what we were talking about earlier with these owners are just so different than the NBA owners. Stephen Ross is like, fuck.
Yeah.
How many coaches am I paying? Fuck it, I don't care. And just, what does he care? He's
Yeah,
got a gajillion dollars. Some of these guys are
and
old.
that's a really, really attractive job. As attractive a job as there is living in Miami and being the coach of the Dolphins, because you have an owner with endless money and you have a really nice place to live with no taxes. Like these hot coaches, like that's a really attractive place to go.
Yeah, I mean, that's for the Pats fans who have been horrified by how sloppy the Pats have been and the terrible strategy and just how awful they look. The thing that a lot of us have focused on is that Kraft's just in his 80s.
Yeah.
And you don't have a ton of these seasons left, right? And you can't be like, yeah, let's see one more year. They're in such a unique situation with Drake May, like on a rookie contract where it's like the single best asset you could have in sports. And they have a lot of work to do. And do you want to set that back a year? I don't know if you do.
Yeah. And it's Jonathan plays a big role there. Like Jonathan Kraft plays a major role there. Another son of an owner. And I think they really, really were the way that whole thing went down with Belichick at the end. I think they really wanted this year to work out in some way. Like, and it hasn't.
It did not.
It's absolutely gone terrible.
Off top of your head, how many teams have benched a quarterback this year?
Benched or injury? Benched? 4.
10.
Okay. It's a lot.
Cousins, Levis, Daniel Jones, Brissett, Fields, Jameis, Richardson, Flacco back and forth, Bryce Young, Minshew, and I'm counting that Hainer guy. Rattler, somebody got benched in that. I don't know.
Yeah,
there's benchings all over the place. That's 1/3 of the league benched their quarterback this year. How are we getting worse?
Not good. And yet you could say that at the top of the league with Burrow and Lamar and Allen, you've got some of the best quarterback play we've ever seen. There's such a gap between the great and the bad. And it's you either have one or you don't. And that's just where we're at.
Am I crazy to think Zach Wilson should have gotten one more chance with somebody to at least start a game?
He had that whole year last year and stunk.
Is he like 24? I don't know.
He's the third string in Denver.
How is Wentz not quarterbacking a team either? That's another one. I mean, even the Chiefs, there's been a lot of dialogue with the Chiefs where they're like,
how does he not a starter?
Asking Mahomes, like, how is this guy a backup? He's so good.
Yeah.
It's like, well, you got to look at that Indianapolis game. All right, next topic. The Calais Campbell release. We rarely see, so Miami is officially out of it. You rarely see, this happens in basketball right before like the March 1st deadline. you rarely see a guy get released by a team who could actually hop onto a playoff team and have a dramatic impact, but I feel like he could.
He could.
Have you heard anything on this?
The last one was like, I think the Chiefs like signed Terrell Suggs at the end of the season and he won a Super Bowl with them back in 2019. And it was like, Sizzle's on our team. Let's go. Calais is like the ultimate ambassador of the league, Walter Payton Man of the Year. And I think he was done right here. And I think he will sign with the Ravens likely, which is a team that I think he was.
Oh, you think it's the Ravens?
I think it's one of these teams. Like he played with the Ravens and was a beloved Baltimore Raven. And if there's
what
a
if
place
it's the
for
Bills? Like what?
Could be
like,
the Bills. Could be the Bills, but he'll go to a contender and he'll play a role and he'll make a big play in a big game. You know that.
What if it's like the Packers? I'm on pins and needles wondering where he goes.
Calais Campbell
like
watch.
The hardest asset to just stumble into in week 17 would be a guy on your defensive line who can push it.
Defensive tackle. Yeah. And he's a great teammate. I have no insight. Rosenhaus is his agent. I could probably get some info in a quick moment. But as of now, I would think Baltimore to me, always with Calais Campbell. That's where he was such a badass for them.
If he actually wants to win a ring, go to the Chiefs.
Go to the Chiefs.
Just go to the Chiefs. Just be next to Chris Jones. Just bang some bodies around. Yeah. Okay. You watched Aaron Rodgers' entire Netflix doc.
No, just the first 2 episodes. Did you watch any of it or no?
I refuse to watch it.
Why? Okay, so I know your team Jimmy Kimmel and cousin Sal, but you won't even watch it?
Has nothing to do with nothing. I would actually watch it to spite Jimmy. It's my friend. No, I just don't want to spend. I don't want to spend, valuable TV time with.
But you're a filmmaker. I watched the Yacht Rock doc, and I loved it. I texted you. This is a good doc. I'm not trying to.
My friend Gotham made it. Those guys are really good at what they do. I'm sure it's well done. I just don't want to hang out with Rodgers for 2 hours.
I would tell you this. And I know we've had a lot of discourse on the player producing, editorial control. And this isn't Ken Burns baseball. This isn't an objective look at this thing. It's Rodgers' story. But the second episode, he goes on this ayahuasca trip with Jordan Poyer and Adrian Colbert and Poyer's mom. And it's like, it goes to places that I don't know exist. And it's interesting. The first episode, it really is good football shit, man. Like,
really?
It is a football doc too. Like, I am telling you, you go and you forget how close he was when he was with the Packers and all those games, and Packers fans will say like, no, we know. But like, the Giants, they beat him when he was a 15-1 quarterback, 19 straight wins. He loses to the Giants in the playoffs, the Falcons in the NFC Championship game, all those 49ers losses, the Buccaneers a couple years ago. But what was really interesting is that you get into Rodgers, and he's always searching. He's like seeking for something that I almost feel just a lot of empathy and sympathy. Like he's a single guy in his 40s right now. And he's like, I'm searching. And there's this hole. But he says he wins the Super Bowl in 2011. And his whole life's goal was proving everyone wrong and proving all those Division I schools wrong. And he mentions Purdue, said like, you're just not athletic enough for Purdue. And he couldn't win a playoff game. And they show a clip of Mooch on NFL Network being like, until Rodgers wins a playoff game, he's not one of the elite guys. Wins the playoff game, wins the Super Bowl. And he says he wakes up the morning after the Super Bowl and it didn't fill his cup. And he's like, what now? And that was 2011 and he's still searching. And I feel like that's a side of Rodgers I haven't seen. And there's no love lost amongst him and the family. And there's all this sort of stuff that you're like, dude, like it's hard for me to really rationalize why you feel this hole in your life. But like, I don't know, it's pretty vulnerable in it. And I think the football shit is pretty good.
Jesus. You almost made me want to watch the first
Enigma.
part.
It's only 3 episodes too. It's not this 7 episode, thing. Like there's been a lot of bad sports docs. You know this. And a lot of them are like, this could have been a nice 60 minute piece that ran on the NBA TV network. Like I don't need to watch this, but I'm telling you, this one was well done. And you come away and you're like, pretty good football. And whether you like Rodgers or not, you're like, that's an interesting deep dive on a dude who gave you all access.
Well, so you're saying I should watch this over La Palma, the Norwegian disaster flick where everything's dubbed, or series that's the #1 TV series on Netflix right now?
Is this the number? I don't know.
La Palma.
I gotta see it.
I like when you start watching those and then 5 minutes in you realize their mouths aren't moving with the words. And you're like, now I get it. These people
I watched
are Norwegian.
one based on the guys from The Watch a couple years ago. It was like 1973 about like German Deutschland. And I'm like, I'm going to watch this show. And I'm like, I can't do it. I tried. Like Andy Greenwald loved it. What's the show? Do you know what I'm talking about? It was like 72 in Germany. And it was like this show that ran on German television. They're like, it's the number one show. I'm like, all right, I trust these guys. I like Chris Ryan. I like Greenwald. And then I gave it like a minute. I'm like, I can't. I tried.
Those guys love it. They love getting super weird with those. Ben and I were watching, we were both working at the kitchen table last night, watching Halloween 6 with Paul Rudd.
Yeah, that's a classic movie.
He's just going for it. The whole movie.
Went for it.
Just really into Michael Myers. It's just an incredible performance.
The best part about that, Paul was on he was like doing like Cider House Rules and like went from Clueless to doing just Broadway and all these things. And he like did that movie and he did a movie that was like filmed in Japan over the course of 2 weeks where he had to bleach his hair blonde. And he's like, those are my movies of like, all right, I'm going to go for it a little bit.